The headphones go in the moment you wake up. Before coffee, before checking your phone, before you've fully decided to be conscious, the music is already on. It's on during the commute, during the workout, during the cooking and the cleaning and the walking from one room to another for reasons you've already forgotten. At work, it's playing underneath everything, a private soundtrack to the public performance of your day. And when you finally lie down at night, there's a good chance something is still playing, easing you towards sleep like an audio escort into unconsciousness. Take the headphones out. Really take them out. Sit in actual silence for a moment, and something feels slightly wrong. Not painful exactly, just off. Like a room with one piece of furniture missing. The silence has a texture that the music was smoothing over, and without it, you become aware of something you'd rather not be quite so aware of. People who always have music on get a specific kind of look from people who don't. A mildly concerned look. Don't you ever just sit in silence, they ask, with the tone of someone suggesting you might want to eat more vegetables. The implication being that the constant music is somehow avoidant or shallow, or a sign of an inability to be alone with your own thoughts. That real, mature, psychologically together people can exist contentedly in quiet. But the psychology behind constant music listening is so much richer and stranger than that. And it says something genuinely fascinating about how certain kinds of minds process the world. Let me show you what's actually going on. Start with what music does to the brain at a neurological level, because it is, frankly, extraordinary. Music activates more areas of the brain simultaneously than almost any other human activity. Visual processing, motor systems, memory centers, emotional regulation circuits, language areas, the reward pathway, all of it lights up at once. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, who spent years studying the brain's response to music, described it as a full brain workout. Not in a casual metaphorical sense, but in a measurable neuroimaging sense. When you listen to music you love, your brain is doing something closer to an orchestra performing than a single instrument playing. Everything is engaged. This matters because it means that for people who are constant music listeners, the music isn't really background. It never was. It is, whether they're conscious of it or not, a continuous engagement with something that activates the full range of their neural architecture. The person who seems to have music on absent-mindedly while they work isn't tuning out. They are, in a very particular way, more fully switched on than the person sitting in silence. Now here's where it gets psychologically interesting. One of the most consistent findings in music psychology research is that people use music primarily as a mood regulation tool. Not passively, actively, strategically, even if unconsciously. Studies by researchers Suvi Sarakalio and others have found that people select music to amplify emotions they want to feel more of, to shift emotions they want to feel less of, and to create emotional states that match the tone of what they're doing. The workout playlist that makes effort feel heroic, the melancholy album you put on when you already feel sad, not to wallow, but to feel the sadness more completely and then, somehow, feel better. The familiar favorite you return to when you need to feel like yourself again. For constant music listeners, this emotional regulation function isn't occasional, it's continuous. The music is doing emotional work around the clock. It's managing the texture of their inner experience in real time, smoothing the jagged edges, amplifying what needs amplifying, containing what needs containing. And when you understand that, the question, "Don't you ever sit in silence?" starts to look different. For some people, silence isn't neutral. It's loud in its own way. It lets in everything the music was organizing, the background anxiety, the unresolved thoughts, the emotional weather that the music was helping to manage. The music isn't blocking experience, it's structuring it. There's also a personality dimension worth exploring here. Research has found a strong association between constant music engagement and the personality trait of openness to experience, the same trait we talked about in cat lovers, as it happens. People high in openness are drawn to sensory richness, to emotional complexity, to immersive experience. Music, which delivers all three simultaneously, is almost perfectly designed for them. It's not that they need music to cope, it's that music represents a kind of continuous access to depth and texture that their particular kind of mind finds genuinely nourishing. High openness individuals also tend to experience what researchers call music-induced chills, that physical shiver or goosebump response that some pieces of music produce, at significantly higher rates than the general population. This response, which involves the release of dopamine and activation of the same neural pathways as other peak emotional experiences, is not universal. Not everyone feels it. But for the people who do, music isn't just pleasant. It is one of the most reliably transcendent experiences available in ordinary daily life. Of course, they never take the headphones out. There is something else happening with constant music listeners that doesn't get enough attention, and it's this. Music gives the thinking mind something to do. Not in a distraction sense, in a more specific sense. Many people who always have music on describe their inner mental life as busy, not anxious necessarily, just active. There are always thoughts running, connections being made, problems being turned over, feelings being processed. For this kind of mind, silence doesn't produce peace. It produces more noise. Internal noise, the running commentary of a brain that doesn't easily idle. Music gives that active inner life a companion signal, something to organize itself alongside. The rhythm provides structure, the melody provides direction, and in the presence of that structure and direction, the background mental activity becomes less chaotic, more focused, more productive. This is why so many writers, programmers, artists, and people who do deep cognitive work have music on constantly while they work. The music isn't competing with the thinking, it's scaffolding it. It gives the restless part of the mind something to hold on to while the focused part does its work. And then there is the identity dimension, which might be the most intimate of all. Because for serious music listeners, the ones who have playlists for specific moods, specific memories, specific times of day, the music is not just something they consume, it's part of how they understand themselves. Certain songs are tied to certain versions of who they've been. An album you listen to obsessively at 17 carries that 17-year-old with it, preserved in audio amber. A song that was playing during something important, a first love, a loss, a long drive that changed something, becomes almost a time machine. Play it again and some cellular memory of that moment surfaces, not just in your mind, but in your body. Music theorist Tia Denora wrote about music as a technology of the self, a tool people use to construct, maintain, and navigate their sense of identity over time. Constant music listeners are, in this framing, people who are continuously engaged in that construction. The playlist is not just entertainment, it is, in a very real sense, a curated autobiography. A running record of who they are and who they've been and who they're trying to feel like right now. Is there a version of constant music listening that tips into something worth examining? Honestly, yes, and it's worth being honest about. When the music becomes purely a wall against silence because silence has become genuinely intolerable, when the headphones go in at the first sign of any uncomfortable feeling, automatically, before you've even registered what the feeling was, there's a question worth asking about what you're managing and whether it might benefit from a different kind of attention. Not silence for silence's sake, but enough quiet occasionally to hear what you're working so hard not to hear. For most constant music listeners, though, that line is not the one they're on. They're on the line of people who have found, through music, a reliable way to inhabit their own experience more richly, more manageably, more fully than they can without it. That's not avoidance. That's self-knowledge. That's knowing what your mind needs and giving it to yourself without apology. The headphones are not a wall between you and the world. For a lot of people, they're the thing that makes the world navigable enough to stay in. Tell me in the comments, what does music do for you specifically? Is it the mood regulation, the focus, the identity thing? or something else entirely that I haven't named? I'm genuinely curious because I think the answers are as individual as the playlists. And if you want to keep exploring the psychology of the things that shape how we experience being alive, stick around.